Good evening and welcome to the May 10th, 2023 East Lansing Planning Commission meeting. Let's start with a roll.
Chairperson Sullivan.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Bowman.
Here.
Commissioner Boyd. Commissioner Denault.
Here.
Commissioner Hendricks. Commissioner Lapine.
Here.
Commissioner Wagner.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
We have 6 present. We have a quorum.
All right, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Vice Chair Bowman, seconded by Williams. Any discussion? One thing I'll just note is on item 6.1, it looks like there was some correspondence that wasn't added to our item 5.1 written communications. So just for consistency, I think moving forward, we might want to have that in one or both places. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Nay. All right, the ayes have it. Motion carries. On to item 1.3, approval of the minutes from the April 26, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Wagner, seconded by Denault. Any discussion? All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. That brings us to item number 2, committee reports. I know Commissioner Hendricks isn't here, so perhaps he can give a small cell ad hoc committee. Is that completed, or can you give an update on that during the staff reports? We could just move to item number 3.
Sure. So the small cell committee, they did meet once. They prepared an initial draft of the guidelines. Staff, though, has been focused on some meetings with the Lansing Board of Water and Light to understand their process for cell placement on co-location situations, as well as an initial meeting with Crown Castle staff to better understand their process. The other thing that we've been doing is exploring the potential of working with the City of Ann Arbor, who has a dedicated staff person for all wireless communications permitting, to see if we could actually utilize some capacity of theirs, given the fact that both Public Works and the Planning Department are short on staff. So we're hoping we can work out an arrangement where we'd be able to leverage some staff time.
Great. We can move on to item number 3 then, staff reports.
Yeah, beyond that, nothing additional to report this evening, so thank you.
All right, super easy. Item number 4, commissioner announcements. Are there any announcements from commissioners? Seeing none. Item 5, specifically item 5.1, written communications. I see that there was 3 communications in our agenda for tonight from the public. I believe there's a 4th in item 6.1, and those were all related to item 6.1, the rezoning for Grove and Burcham. I believe those were split in favor and in opposition. So I believe that brings us on to item 5.2, verbal from the audience. Is there any members of the audience that wish to come forward and address the Planning Commission? Specifically, if you're going to be addressing item 6.1, we ask that you come forward at that time. But any other items that you wish to bring forward, please, now's your chance. All right, seeing none, is there anybody online in the queue that wishes to address the commission?
We do not have anybody waiting in the queue.
Great. All right, that brings us on to our public hearings portion. Item 6.1, ordinance number 1520, Grove and Burcham rezoning. Is that you, Mr. Dempsey?
I'll just kick it off by stating, just for everyone's clarification, that obviously tonight is the public hearing for this rezoning. The Planning Commission will not be taking action. That will come at a subsequent meeting, but I just wanted to be clear because in a number of our communications with residents, they weren't necessarily familiar with the process, so we wanted to be fully transparent so they understood that tonight is to have that public hearing, give them an opportunity to provide input, hear from the applicant, hear from staff, and then we will obviously be back at this table again in 2 weeks for further consideration. But I'll turn it over to Taylor to provide the staff report.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the request for the commission today is an application from Hagen Realty Incorporated, LLC, representing several other owners in a request, as well as themselves, in a request to rezone 7 parcels from R2 to RM32. Those addresses are 135 Burcham, 709 Grove, 715 Grove, 725 Grove, 755 Grove, 743 Grove, and 765 Grove. The parcels are located on the western side of Grove Street between Ridge Road and Burcham Drive. Currently, the subject properties are a mix of housing types. The majority are single-family detached with one small multiplex multiple family building along Burcham Drive, as well as a fraternity. Many of the dwellings are rentals, excepting 2. All of the properties are currently zoned R2, which is medium-density single-family residential. To the west are multiple small office buildings zoned R1, which is general office business district. To the north is a religious institution zoned RM32. To the south and across the street from Burcham, across Burcham Drive are properties with single-family detached residential dwellings zoned R2. To the east, across Grove Street, is a sorority at the corner of Burcham Drive and Grove Street, which is zoned RM32 as well. To the no, that's right. To the also to the east across Grove Street, at the corner of Ridge Road and Grove Street, so at the northern half of, if you go across the way, at the northern, if you split them in half, are 3 properties with single-family detached residential units. Those addresses are 748 Grove Street, 740 Grove Street, and 730 Grove Street. Those are all zoned R2 as well. At the corner of Burcham Drive and Grove Street is 709 Grove Street, which is part of the College Grove Historic District. Any alterations to this property, is important to note, would have to be approved by the Historic District Commission. So any alterations or demolition would have to go through that commission as well at that point. In the future land use map, most of the properties are designated R4, which is the second highest residential single-family district in the flume in the future land use map. This doubles the allowed density from the current zoning district, which is R2, which allows for 8 units an acre to 16 an acre. It also allows for different types of housing, row houses, and small to medium multiplex buildings, up to 2.5 stories, or 4 with a bonus. The 2 exceptions to this are the properties 765 Grove Street and 755 Grove Street. These are along the northern edge of this collection of properties, and those are designated M1 in the future land use map. There are no density limitations designated specifically in M1, but it does specifically state in M1 that it is low density mixed use development. It's also analogous to the B1 office district, but offers more mixed use and retail option uses allowed. And that also allows buildings up to 3 stories in height. When you compare and contrast the existing, so R2, with the proposed zoning district, RM32, the uses permitted are expanded from single-family dwellings to include 2-family dwellings, multiple family dwellings containing 4 fewer dwelling units with 4 fewer bedrooms in each unit. The use is permitted by right, but subject to an approved site plan. In R2 are schools, churches, and parks. And in RM32, that same uses that are permitted by right but are subject to an approved site plan include multiple family dwellings containing 5 or more dwelling units, each of those containing 4 or fewer bedrooms per unit, as well as nursing and extended care facilities. There are no uses allowed by special use permit in R2, but there are several uses permitted by SUP in RM32. I'll list a few. This is a non-exhaustive list, so it includes community centers, professional clinics, and offices, as well as Class B dwellings, as well as Class A dwellings. So Class B dwellings would be group quarters such as co-ops or fraternities. And then the density allowed in R2 is 8 units per acre, and the density allowed in RM32 is 54 units per acre. The maximum height allowed in R2 is 2.5 stories, and the maximum height allowed in RM32 is 3 stories. The maximum ground coverage allowed in R2 is 40%, and the maximum in RM32 for ground coverage is 60%. To be specific, ground coverage is the amount of the lot that can be covered by impervious materials. So that includes all paving, structures, and any accessory buildings as well, so garages and things like that. I am happy to answer any additional questions. The applicant is also here tonight to answer further questions.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Please.
I just have a quick question for you, Taylor. Can you say in a nutshell what the difference in density is between the R2 and the M32 and the difference in height of buildings? Was it 2 stories versus 3 stories?
So R2 allows for 2.5 stories as a maximum, and then RM32 allows for 3 stories maximum.
Okay.
It does also allow for up to 6 stories with a bonus, but that bonus is only applicable to acre lots greater than 6 acres. So this particular rezoning doesn't qualify, as it's less than that. It's less than 2.5 acres in total, all 7 properties. The density allowed in R2 is 8 an acre. So each lot has to be 5,000 square feet, and so if you take what an acre is, which is 43,560, you get 8 units. And then for RM32, it's much smaller that's allowed. It's each minimum lot size, or for each dwelling, you have to have an equivalent 800 square feet. So that shakes out to be 54 per acre density allowed.
Thanks.
Yes.
Any additional questions from commissioners? I had a couple for you. So I'm just trying to visualize what this upzoning would look like there. Would, say, 3-story row houses be typical of potentially what would fit on a site like this?
Row houses would be allowed and you could do that, yes. RM32 does allow for 3 stories, yes. So you could see 3 stories, max development. Yeah, 3 stories or 40 feet. So you can have larger stories, but
Okay.
yeah.
And then looking at your table here on page 11, so if this were to get rezoned, essentially if somebody wanted to build a single-family house, the requirements wouldn't really change, would they?
They would be subject to R3 zoning as it pertains to single family. So the difference between R2 zoning and R3 zoning primarily is the fact that most of the standards are exactly the same in terms of setbacks, lot coverage, lot parameters, and those kinds of things. The only difference is that 2-family dwellings are allowed in R3. So it's just a little bit, whereas R2 does not allow for 2-family dwellings by right.
Okay. And then I'm looking at the allowable uses with a special use permit, and I could envision something like a senior center being on the ground floor, potentially with units above. Is that a possibility under RM32? I mean, it says art galleries, libraries, museums.
So mixed use, mixes of use, mixed use with residential above and some sort of commercial unit at the bottom. I believe so. I believe that mixed uses are allowed, but I would have to check that specifically in that collaboration. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just to clarify, is it a mixed use thing or is it an either or? Would be my question. So, thank you. Any additional questions from commissioners? All right, I think we're ready for the applicant.
How you doing? My name is Kevin Hagan with Hagan Realty. I'd like to thank you for your time tonight. I'll try to get out of here as quickly as possible. I think the staff did a nice job in covering a lot of that, as what they mentioned. We are requesting a rezoning from R2 to RM32, which talked about that the future land use, as indicated in the comprehensive plan, calls for an increase in density in this area. If approved, this would lay some sort of foundation for potential projects that would be in line with the comprehensive plan. In the meantime, it would also bring properties, a couple of the properties to be in conformity. The 7-bedroom property, the fraternity, which we've always found that the city is a priority of the city to make it conformity. So at this time, we do not have a development planned. However, the type of structures we would consider would be similar to what you see in your packet in the R4 with row townhomes, row houses, small to medium multifamily structures. I don't know if you've seen any of ours across the city. with some townhomes or small apartment buildings. And those would, of course, all apply to the RM32 zoning, or comply, excuse me. I think that we touched base a little bit on the, if we are applying for multiple properties to be rezoned. However, it would not, in any circumstance that we're aware of at this point, be one big, large building, as far as some massive building. So, that would, other property owners, that would be up to them what they do. So, I think the commission's well aware of this, but I think it's very important to note that the comp plan is as a result of years of hard work from the planning commission, the comp plan committee, of course, several public meetings with staff or community members voicing their opinion. And I think that they've all indicated that this is an area that this should be an increase in zoning. I think when the comp plan got together, they saw what was already on the ground with the 7-bedroom house, the fraternity, the properties to the north that are zoned RM32 with the Abbott Manor apartment building, the sorority, and of course directly to the west, the B1 zoning with the properties located along Abbott. And I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, but it seems to fit that those zones a little bit better than what's currently there. Just to clarify a few things, I know there was a few public comments. As you probably know, we are a family business that has been around for a long time, and hopefully will be around for a long time, and grew up on streets like Elizabeth and Snyder and Gunson. So we are well aware of the challenges that student housing, if it's student housing, or rental properties, I guess I should say, can create. I think that there's a little bit of disconnect here. I think the 700 block, as the staff mentioned, it's not like we're suggesting a neighborhood that has one rental property and we're going in and saying, let's flip the switch. You look at the west side of the road, as they mentioned, is 5 out of the 7 are licensed. The one that we own is not licensed, and it's seen its better days. It's a vacant property. It's been vacant for most of the last 3 decades. So I personally believe some of the projects that we've done would increase the look, and I don't believe it would be a student, quote, ghetto at that time. And then, of course, across the street, you have the same type of licensing going on, similar, including CRMC's beautiful new sorority on the corner, which I think is fantastic. I do agree, the property at 730, we were fortunate enough to go through that property, 730 Grove, a few years ago with the owner. That is a gem. I just would like to clarify that is not part of the rezoning and would never be part of a project. So I know you guys have a lot of things to consider. I really appreciate your time. If you have any questions for me, I'm all ears. So.
Any questions from commissioners?
Just a
Vice Chair?
clarification,
Yep.
Mr. Hagan.
Yep.
You referenced, I didn't hear, you referenced one of the images that show up as part of the comprehensive plan, and we've got an R4 and an M2 in here, and which one did you say that, what you were sort of envisioning? I realized.
We were thinking R4. Okay. I think some of the M starts talking about mixed use. Middle of a neighborhood, a mixed use is not what we envision there, so. But.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Thank you.
I just had a couple, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
So you said you don't have any specific set plan in place.
Sure.
But just, this is not envisioned as one big building, but is it envisioned as one development with multiple buildings or separate developments or?
Well, like I said, we own one of the parcels. We're in discussion with one of the properties, but a couple of the other property owners, CRMC owns several properties. While we respect everything that they do, we've never done a project with them and don't intend to. But to answer your question, more likely, it would be a couple parcels that would be, depending on, if the row of townhomes, maybe if you have to space them out, have a space between them, or one row of townhomes, something like that. We believe in parking. I know that there was concerns of parking. Every project that we've built, we've tried to maximize the parking for a variety of reasons, but I think there was, even some of the projects we did, there was hope from the city that we would build bigger projects with less parking, but that's not necessarily our goal. And so by doing that, you have to shrink the size of your building to allow for more parking. So it keeps the density lower than what could probably be allowed on the property.
Is it safe to say that that the current zoning there is what's holding back the rehabilitation or the replacement of what's currently there on these sites?
I would think so. I think that, like I said, we purchased the property that's been vacant for a long time. It's in rough shape, and yeah, I mean, even if you were to rezone and not do a project, if you were to rehab that house and make it into a rental property, it would be difficult because of the condition of the property. So, yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions?
I had a question.
Commissioner Denault?
Is there so in the future land use map, this area is designated as R4,
Yeah.
and you're requesting RM32. Can you explain a little bit more why you're requesting a upzoning to RM32 rather than R4?
I guess is it possible to request a R4 at this point?
R4 doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's
R4 is in the future land use map, so it's a designation that potentially will exist in the future. So it's an envisioning tool currently.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I reference the comp plan, that's kind of the future of what people have kind of gone together to create.
So it's safe to say that that's just the closest approximation of
The
what
future
an
land
R4
use,
is.
the future land use, the master plan specifically states that R4 is most analogous to a mix of RM8 and RM14. So it's analogous in size and density to RM14, so height and how many you can build, but it is, and setbacks and ground coverage. But it is, R8 allows for more mixed uses, so allows for some neighborhood commercial services to be implemented in conjunction with a neo-traditional cluster plan. However, that's what it states. It states it allows for some uses. The R4 allows for some commercial neighborhood services to be provided in conjunction with a little bit of higher density, which is equivalent in density to RM14.
Okay.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah.
Any last questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So at this point, we will open up the public hearing. Are there any members of the public that wish to come forward and address the commission on this project? And when you come up and speak, would you please fill out a card with your name and information?
Before?
After is fine.
Thank you. I wanted to express that I would be one of the people representing those persons who are most affected by your considerations and decisions through the next few weeks. My name is Deborah Ann Stewart. I'm representing also other family members of Stewart family members who have resided on Grove Street for over 62 years. So I have seen a lot of changes, as you can imagine. I provided a letter upon initially hearing immediately about the first awareness I had of the proposal. I will take a moment to read the letter as it was in your packet, but it appeared after 60 pages, and I know that's a lot of material to go through. First, I wanted to thank the Planning Commission members for your time and talent to serve voluntarily on the commission. My father was Roger H. Stewart. He was a member of the community and chose to live here for over 91 years. He served over 15 years on the East Lansing Planning Zoning Board of Commission, giving his time and love for the community. As a property tax appeals consultant, he was very aware of how zoning affected the worth of properties and the composition of neighborhoods and the interactions that occurs within a neighborhood. And this is why I wrote and why I felt it important to speak as a 60-plus year resident of Grove Street concerned about our neighborhood. As a family-owned tax-paying resident for 60-plus years and now a homeowner in the 600 block of Grove Street, I'm directly aware of how one by one, house by house, changing zoning from residential single-family dwelling to multi-units has changed the composition of Grove Street from a neighborhood with strength and balance to a street with blocks of less neighborly activity. The 600 block of Grove Street is an excellent example of balance and community. Many of my neighbors are here tonight as well as those who have communicated with you by email due to their ages. On this block, there are 7 family-owned homes. One is a third-generation family owned and resided in the home, another a second family generation residence. 3 of the homes have young children and 1 a high schooler. 3 of the homes are owned by seniors living independently. 3 homes are rental properties, housing students. This balance allows us to know one another as neighbors. I strongly propose that the rezoning of not 1 but 7 properties to RM32 City Center Multifamily Residential District be denied, and instead to maintain, as it is, a R2 medium-density single-family residential district. The location, as you probably know, is 1 block from this city center, East Lansing Hannah Community Center, 1 block from the library, 1 block from the high school, which is all ideal for families with children, some of who are here tonight. There must also be a concern about that which was mentioned earlier by our applicant, parking and traffic for additional vehicles. If a zoning change were made, additional vehicles and parking spaces would bring a negative effect on the surrounding neighborhood, community, and the unique examples of historic architecture, including the Dow House across the street. The 730 Grove Street residence was designed by Alwyn Dow, a student mentored by the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. As we know, Wright designed for the surrounding spaces and the environment, not just as a structure. His designs are works of art for this reason. The Alwyn Dow home at 730 Grove Street is a gem in the community, which is affected by the community. In closing, there are no benefits to rezoning or demolishing single-family homes on Grove Street for the benefit of a developer or rental company in order to overbuild in the existing historic neighborhood. It will lower property values of longtime tax-paying residents. It will significantly impact traffic flow. I strongly support a recommendation for as-is continued R2 medium-density single and family residential zoning on the street I've resided and paid taxes on with my family for over a 60-year period. In closing, quickly, I wanted to point out that we should all be aware of the historic preservation code of the City of East Lansing. The City of East Lansing provides for the establishment of heritage neighborhoods, encourages property owners and residents to participate in preservation activities, enhance, improve, and preserve neighborhoods, stabilize and improve property values, strengthens the local economy, fosters civic beauty and pride, and promotes the use of historic districts and heritage neighborhoods for the education, pleasure, welfare of the citizens of East Lansing. I'm speaking tonight because of quality of life concerns for those who have resided in the neighborhood and continue to choose to live there. I hope that you will consider their quality of life when making your decisions in the next few weeks. Thank you for your time, and I do appreciate each of your efforts to make the East Lansing community a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to note that Commissioner Hendricks arrived at 7:26 for the minutes. And then the last comments were right around 5 minutes, which is great because that's the time period allotted per person.
Hi. My name is Lisa Hominick. I live at 222 Ridge Road, and I'm glad it was referred to as road tonight. As I was looking through the packet, it says Ridge Street, and I said, I've lived there for 32 years, and I thought it was Ridge Road, but I believe it is road. Anyway, I'm eager to buy a home in East Lansing to raise a family. I looked for a walkable neighborhood, not completely in the student housing universe, walkable to K-12 schools, the library, downtown, and MSU. This small neighborhood of single-family homes encompassing the 700 block of Grove and Ridge Road was a perfect location. I've lived on this 9-house block, as I said, for over 32 years. I also have seen a lot of transformation and transition, as it is in the whole of East Lansing as well. Currently, our little block, has gone from primarily retirees. When I moved in, we were amongst the youngest ones on the block, to a mix of retiree students and young professionals, which provides a vibrant community for our little neighborhood. Aesthetics aside, demolishing single-family home structures, including a historical structure, if that was the case, losing mature trees on Grove and Burcham, replacing them with multi-unit structures or another sorority, which I have heard rumor of. Would adversely affect the neighborhood by contributing to the density. If you had, doing the math, maybe I'm not all right, up to 64 more people in density, if you're putting in different multi-unit apartments, which will affect the neighborhood density and in turn leads to further traffic and parking problems. Ridge and Grove already accommodate overflow event parking from the 2 sororities now, the church, the library, and of course in the fall, not unlike the rest of the city, MSU football games. So for a 9-block area to bring in more units and change the whole character of it would change the whole character of the neighborhood, and I would urge you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Art Brown. I live at 602 Grove Street. My wife purchased the home in 2012, and when she and I met in 2015, it was a very easy decision to choose to live in her home rather than mine in Mason. A lot of the reasons for that are because of the walkability, like the previous speaker mentioned, proximity to libraries, schools, downtown, campus, and as I quickly learned, the biggest reason why our block, our neighborhood, was the best choice for us is the neighbors that we have. Tim and Rita. Tim will be speaking later this evening. They've become like another set of grandparents to my young son, Calvin, and my 5-year-old, who I think might be here shortly, Will. Our neighbor, Deb, always welcomes us into the home, and several other neighbors have really made our little pocket of East Lansing a warm and welcoming place. And our fear is that if this proposal goes through, takes away some single-family homes in the area, increases the density, we'll have increased foot traffic, increased street traffic that could detrimentally impact the safety of our children. Living in the area, we're aware that college life is a part of the neighborhood. It contributes to some of the excitement at times on game day and things like that, and we accept that. But the majority of that is in one direction. If this proposal goes through, our fear is that we will kind of be surrounded by that, and it would kind of make us feel like we're being forced out of our neighborhood. So I think that's the primary reason why my family and I would hope that you frown upon this proposal and keep the current zoning as is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Linda Maloney, and I'm here representing the people that live at 630 and 632 Grove. One of them is my mother-in-law, Ellen Ferenczi, who I don't think I'm telling tales on her, turned 97 today. In 632 is my son, daughter-in-law, and a 4th generation Ferenczi, 18 months old. So Ellen, Peter, Kendall, and Ryan have made a home that they hope to enjoy for many years to come. And it's true, it is a real neighborhood. All of the people except the lady from Ridge Road I am aware of and have met, and they have been nothing but supportive, from Ellen down to welcoming little Ryan toddling up and down the sidewalks. And I'd appreciate that we be able to keep the atmosphere, the safety, the neighborhood that we have, and that you deny the application. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tim Rosowski. I live at 613 Grove Street since 1981 with my wife Rita. And is it a hard and fast rule that you have to stay to 5 minutes? Because I have 20 points that I'd like to cover. So is it a rule of the Planning Commission to limit it to 5 minutes?
Yeah, that's been our standard rule for a public comment period.
But is it an official rule?
Yeah, I believe so.
You could consider 2 people.
Yeah, well, maybe read. Well, I'll speak fast then. Okay. Well, first of all, I do think. I mean, our concern, of course, is the impact of this, of whatever would happen on those parcels on both Grove Street and on Ridge Road. I think we have a great neighborhood. We have a good mix of students and homeowners. We enjoy it. We all like living where we are, close to amenities and so forth, and the campus and the city. So we're used to living with students. I mean, we've lived there for over 40 years, so we understand what that means. We've had our share of little events and that, almost all of them related to drinking, after the bars get out. And so, that's a significant concern. If the density on the 700 block expands by, and my calculations are a little bit different than the staff members' calculations, I guess, or the applicant's calculations, and I'm going to show you why that's the case. So I believe under R32 that when you look at, you apply the rules, it's 450 square feet per individual of site area. So 1.8 plus or minus acres would equate possibly to 175 people. And that's in the zoning rule. That's in the current zoning code. So whether that would happen, we have no idea. So one of the things I'd like you to think about is all of the possibilities that could be there. The applicant has sort of implied something, but we have no guarantee. The zoning runs with the property, and it's independent of any particular project. So we have no idea. He says there's no intent to merge the properties, but maybe there could. So easily, people could get together and merge the properties, make one larger parcel. It's not inconceivable. If you ask me 40 years ago, would the church on the corner by the library have been converted to a fraternity or sorority or whatever it is? I'd have said, absolutely not, it's a church. So what would stop, for example, some of the properties on Abbott merging with properties on Grove because they butt up against each other? Say All Saints, for example. All Saints is one of the properties here. They could potentially assemble 3 acres. That would allow a 6-story building. And they could do that under the rules, under RM32. It would create some legal gymnastics they would have to do. So I think the important thing to do is to think about all the things that could be and think about all the implications. We have no guarantee that it would be row houses or these small dwelling units, as were described. Under RM32, you could build single-family residences. I don't think you will, but you could. So one of the things, that's one point, is to think through all of the possible implications of all of the uses. So for example, if it's a property other than multi-family dwelling, or multi-dwelling, I guess is the description, it requires 50% of the parking to be off-site. So, and it also requires access to parking to be off of an alley. Well, there is no alley. Anyway, the point here is that if it's any other functional use, which it could be under RM32, because there's no restriction from keeping it that way, you could get something considerably different than what the applicant has done. So there is no project. There was no communication with the public. I don't think you approached anybody to give us any idea of what you were thinking about in this project. As an architect, I would never do that. I would never propose something this dramatic and not consult the people who would be affected by it. I think that's horrible. Anyway, moving on to my points. The first thing is the concerns with the master plan itself. So there is no R4. Even the master plan recognizes there's no R4, and it doesn't even know what the definition of it. It could be RM8. It could be RM14. The master plan is not a legal document. It's a guidance document. It's not law. So there's been no opportunity to actually vet within the public of what R4 means. I'd like to be able to input. Maybe R4 is something different than R2 and less than RM8. So shouldn't we be able to have a conversation to discuss what RM4 means? I mean, this is, I think it was a consultant who probably put that statement in there, that that's what they meant by R4. But for whatever reason, we chose not to actually identify in the master plan the uses that we already have, or the use categories that we have. Anyway, moving on. So some other concerns with the master plan is that since 2018, a lot's happened in our city. We've built a lot of housing. Is there a need for more housing? Maybe, I don't know. Is this the right spot to put it? You've got quite a few properties along Grand River, which I think in the next form-based code may be identified for housing. Why not put this housing closer to campus? Why do something that will impact the neighborhoods potentially very negatively? Why not put it in other areas? So we've had a lot of new housing built since the plan was developed. We have a complete new city council who apparently wants to rearrange all of city government. We have planning staff, the lead person on this master plan fled. She doesn't work here anymore. So maybe it's time to rethink the master plan and what the definition of R4 is and where it should be applied in different areas. Next point. The master plan, in my view, is out of date in light of the fact that we have the Red Cedar development, the Landmark, the Newman building, the Abbott Apartments, the, what's yours called? Yours is called the Element, I guess it is. Is that yours? Well, we have the Element, we have the Hub. All of those have been built basically since this master plan process has been going on. So where's the evidence that we need to build more multifamily? And if so, is this the right spot? I don't think a lot of the residents were very aware of the master plan process. You know, I think it started maybe in 2016 and went to 2018. And yes, people could input, but I don't think the average citizen was very aware. So I don't think that designation of R4 maybe reflected what people would want. So I mean, you know, whether people should be involved, yes, they should, but the reality is not everybody gets involved in that process. Next thing, in the report, there was a traffic study. It's irrelevant. That traffic study means nothing because it only reflects one possible thing, and that's small multiple family dwellings under RM32. What if it's a community center? What if it's a nursing home? What if it's a 6-story apartment building? The traffic study doesn't reflect any of the other uses other than this unnamed one. The applicant hasn't put anywhere in any written document that I can see what they intend to do. The only way you can glean what they're going to do is from the traffic study. It says they're going to build these 4-unit buildings, I guess, on each parcel. It does ignore one of the parcels, it leaves it out, so I guess that one's not going to have anything on it. So, but what if it's a community center? What if it's a assisted living? Or what if it's, you know, one of the other uses that are allowable? The traffic study doesn't address anything other than this one thing that the applicant's not even proposing. So I would just suggest you reject it. It doesn't address parking, and it certainly doesn't address the foot traffic. I wouldn't expect a traffic study to affect foot traffic, but I can tell you for our street, it's one of the major issues. So we get a lot of bar traffic when the bars close. Hundreds of people. I don't want another 175 people walking up our street, you know, after midnight, after they've gotten out of the bars. So I think the traffic study, you really realistically should look at how that is, or come to a Friday night or something. And again, we recognize this is the conditions of the neighborhood we live in, but you're thinking about adding a great deal of people, or potentially we could. Concerns with the parcel dimensions. RM32 for multi-dwelling requires 75 feet. Almost all of the parcels are only 66 feet. The only thing you can build under RM32 is single-family residences, because none of the properties are 75 feet wide, except the one on Burcham, 135 Burcham. They're all 66 feet. We looked it up. So you say that you want to bring things more into compliance. They're not in compliance. They would not be in compliance with what you're asking for, unless you build single-family homes, which we probably wouldn't oppose. But I don't think that's what you're going to do. So check that out. The staff member said something about the other concerns are just the character, physical size, the impact on the neighborhood. But you said something about 3 stories, and recognize that under RM32, they could go to 6 stories if they could assemble these parcels to get to 3 acres. It's in your ordinance. I think that would be, kind of overwhelming for that spot. It was already commented on the historic district. Most of us, I don't know about Ridge, but and I don't think it's in the historic area, but in Grove Street we are. And, you know, we benefited from it. I think it's really helped to preserve our neighborhood. Sometimes it gets a little frustrating. I had to get a certificate of appropriateness in October to replace 50 square feet of wood siding with exactly the same wood siding. It would make a mockery of the whole historic process if you tore down a house to build an apartment building when our neighbor has to get one to replace their front door, a certificate of appropriateness. I mean, it'd be just an absolute joke, the whole historic district process there. That would only affect the one property, that's 709 Grove. Density I've already commented on, even though we're thinking, you know, we think this is going to be these tidy little buildings with 4 units per acre and four bedrooms. I don't know, Mr. Dempsey, does 4 bedrooms mean only 4 occupants, or could they have 2 occupants in a bedroom?
Depends on the square footage of the unit.
So it's square footage. So my view of taking the square foot, if they were merged, taking the square footage and dividing by 450 is really the maximum, right? I mean, that's true, right?
Correct. That is
yeah.
accurate.
Okay. All right. So density, I think, is an issue. The nighttime foot traffic I've talked about, so I'll just stop here, except I want to just kind of give you a few things. And we've lived here a long time, so we've had a lot of events, and some are pretty humorous. You know, one morning we woke up and somebody had put a futon on my wife Rita's car. I don't know why. And another time we woke up and somebody had put a computer desk in our tree. I don't really know why that is, but you have to, I don't know where any of you live, but you know, if you live where, you know, 100 inebriated people walk up your street, you know, every Friday night, Thursday night, now it's Wednesday night, you know, you would have it appreciated. Just some of the events. In October, we had an armed robbery in front of our house. 2 females were walking up the street on their phones. A car pulled up. 4 people got out, 2 with guns, and stole their phones. They pulled up in front of our house. They actually committed the robbery about maybe 10 feet north of our drive. My rear windshield was broken with a big rock that threw through it. So, you know, we park at our driveway, and somebody just walks by at night and throws a rock through it. A couple of weeks ago, we had a person who passed out. You know, our lot is pretty small. In fact, I think we might have maybe one of the smallest lots in East Lansing. We're only 45 feet wide and about 80 feet deep. And so we have a little hedge of boxwoods that are about this tall. Person passed out in the boxwood. He's literally, his head's on the boxwood, which is right at the sidewalk. Groups of people walked by him. So we have it on our Ring camera. For over an hour, people walked by, and then finally 2 girls said, geez, what, you know, and then they kind of rescued him. Other events, storm door smashed with a rock. These are all happening after the bars get out. Futon, I mentioned, the computer desk, 2 bikes stolen, car break-in, newly planted plum tree. Somebody just pulled it out, dragged it up the street. We actually have a police report, but some of these we have police reports on. We found it a couple days later in the boulevard of Grand River. And then our neighbors replanted it for us. The air let out tires. 2 occasions where people tried to enter our front door thinking they were at some other house. So like on MAC. We had one person try to get in our back door through our backyard who thought he was on Linden Street. 7 police showed up and nabbed him. So that was kind of interesting. But he was a pretty violent guy. Flag stolen, which I actually found on a porch on the 700 block of Grove. Let's see, urination, of course, weekly landscape damage, fireworks. I don't mind fireworks at all, except when like 2 in the morning, somebody lights off 1. You know, if they did a whole bunch, it probably wouldn't be as bad because you'd kind of expect it. But just out of the blue, somebody lights off 1 firework, you know, on the street. Noise, loud talking. Every group that goes by talks loud. And litter. So 7-Eleven, you know, we get a lot of 7-Eleven stuff. We used to get a lot of Taco Bell stuff. Now we get a lot of Target bags. So the concern really is, for me, the number one concern is just the increase in number of people who will be navigating our block at, you know, midnight plus when the bars get out. So I have a bunch of comments, and I didn't submit them because I wanted to hear what staff said and what the applicant said, but I'll correct, revise any of these, and then I'll get those to you. And as I understand it, then still opportunity at the next meeting to make public comments and provide written comments. Okay. Any questions?
I just had one.
Yes.
I think you did a good job of outlining all the possible negative developments that could be built here. Is it possible, and this is just the first stage, right, in any sort of development being placed there, that there could be something put here that would be beneficial to the community, that would bring new people in, new families in? And I know you talked about the number of people walking back from the bars due to the new upsize and rezoning. I don't see there's any guarantee here that this is going to be students, right? Like, we don't know that. As you said, we don't know what's going to be
Absolutely
put here.
not.
So do you see, hypothetically, should this get rezoned, anything that would be a positive to the community that could be built here under the new zoning?
Well, it depends. Under RM32, he could build single-family dwellings. That probably would be a plus, like what was done over by Marble School. That could be done. So, yeah, I might support that, depending upon what those are. So, I'll give you that one. I don't know how other people would feel about those particular houses. I don't. If your question is there any way I think? Well, first of all, I think you have to treat the properties a little bit differently. So Burcham is one thing, and the master plan designates R4, even though we don't know what it is, but it lists R4 on the plan, and it says, and that was another point that I didn't make here because I got off my script here, but it says, well, I'll read it to you. And most of the properties don't meet the intent of R4. Okay, so this is what the master plan says about R4. It's where there is multiple family housing, which you could say 709 does. It's next to multiple family housing. I don't know whether the fraternity is considered multiple family or not, but maybe it is. But when you work your way up the block, so you could, if a fraternity is multiple family housing, okay, then maybe 725 is next to multiple family housing, but 743, 755, 765, they're not next to multiple family housing, and it's not on the edge of a core street. 743 is not adjacent to, a core thoroughfare. So at least 3, possibly 4 of your properties don't even meet the intent of what R4 is in the master plan. If the master plan, again, it's not a legal document, but if it were, 4 of the properties don't meet it. They don't meet the requirements. There's nothing in the master plan that says R4 should be next to, is in an area where M1s are located or M2s or whatever the church property is. There's nothing in the master plan that calls for that. So, would I like to see a museum there? Well, I don't know. I guess I'd like to see what would happen with the traffic there. But could there be some, socially conscious use or something? I don't know. Certainly single family.
Thank you. Any questions? Are there any other members of the public that wish to come forward? Is there anybody online in the queue?
We have nobody waiting in the queue.
All right, well, we will see this agenda item in 2 weeks. At this point, we'll close the public hearing, and we shall see this agenda item in 2 weeks at the next commission meeting. That brings us on to item number 7.1, old business, consideration of a special use permit site plan application to renovate the building at 212 Albert Avenue and expand the existing restaurant with a new Class C liquor license. Taylor?
Thank you. So the Planning Commission held a public hearing on April 26, 2023 for this SUP site plan application to expand the Jolly Pumpkin Restaurant at 218 Albert Avenue into the white box space to the west, 212 Albert Avenue, within the larger center city building. They're also bringing a Class C liquor license into the city. The memo before you in the packet has a motion, should the Planning Commission consider recommending approval. The motion is listed there as well as several conditions. The conditions are standard for SUP, the SUP process to sell alcohol. A lot of them are specific to alcohol consumption behavior, restaurants, such as that. The SUP also sets an occupancy load at a max of 160 people. And then if you combine that condition in this application with the existing Jolly Pumpkin occupancy allowed by their SUP, then you would get a total of 396 maximum allowed. So that would be the combination. That no more than that could possibly be allowed. But of course, they're also subject to building requirements, which may be less than that. So that would go into effect with their certificate of occupancy later on down the line. They did submit an outdoor dining, so an outstanding item from last time was the review of the outdoor dining plan. The outdoor dining plan was submitted, it's in the packet. It proposes an additional 20 outdoor dining seats directly in front of 2012 Albert Avenue. This would be in addition to their existing 40 outdoor dining seats in front of Jolly Pumpkin now, so it would just be in a similar, exact same dimensions, just perhaps just down the street, in the same way that that outdoor dining is managed through the SUP for Jolly Pumpkin. This one would also be managed in that any seating that is seasonal outdoors would have to be subtracted. An equivalent amount would have to be removed from the inside. So that occupancy load would remain the same regardless of if outdoor seating is used or not. So that helps to clarify that. That occupancy load is max. It doesn't change regardless of if they are using their outdoor seasonal dining seating or not. There is some other SUP, so I talked about the other conditions related to conduct, age of patrons, security, other standard conditions related to alcohol retail, and then there's some other conditions related specifically to the plan proposed, and they're fairly standard, requiring permits and things like that. So a motion is provided in the packet, should you consider taking action, and the applicant is here for further clarification if there's any other questions, and I can also answer some as well. Yes. Oh, sorry.
I've got a quick question. So, number 18 says the outdoor area, our service area shall be vacated by 12 midnight. I know that Jolly Pumpkin has outdoor seating. Is it also 12 midnight there? I'm just surprised because the noise ordinance is 11, right? So, people are outside rowdy, whatever. Okay. As long as it's the same as Jolly Pumpkin has, that's fine, I guess.
It is the same.
Okay.
Just to confirm.
Questions
Yeah.
from commissioners? I believe a motion is in order, unless there's any questions for the applicant.
I'm here to represent the applicant, actually.
Okay, great. Do you have anything in addition you'd like to bring up?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question on the
Please.
applicant? Hi, I was just looking, so after this meeting, 2 weeks ago, I was looking online at the menus for the Ypsilanti and the, I think it's Ann Arbor mash.
Yes.
And I was surprised that, I thought it was going to be more the same food as Jolly Pumpkin will be in the mash, but online, it was bar snacks. Those are the menus, so it's a completely different type of menu.
It will basically be like an hors d'oeuvre or small plate menu that we feature currently at Jolly Pumpkin. We'll be over in that area on a certain time basis.
So if someone wanted to order a burger, could they order a lamb burger in the mash, or?
As
No.
long as the kitchen can accommodate it, then yes.
Okay.
Any additional questions? All right, now I believe a motion is in order.
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
All right. Commissioner Williams?
I move to recommend approval of the special use permit and site plan application from BL MASH East Lansing LLC to expand the existing restaurant located at 212 Albert Avenue into the adjoining 4,755 square foot space at 212 Albert and serve alcohol with a Class C liquor license. Approval is based on the following findings. The proposed development meets all applicable ordinance requirements. The proposal meets the 8 standards of review identified in Section 50-38 of the Code of Ordinances, and the proposed use of the property is compatible with surrounding land uses and will not adversely impact the use and enjoyment of adjacent properties. And the motion to recommend approval of the cluster development plan and site plan is subject to the 24 conditions outlined in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Seconded by Commissioner Wagner. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I think we discussed this at some length in the last meeting. I actually had not been to Jolly Pumpkin other than the one in Ann Arbor, which I had visited and made a point to visit it and look at the site, and I'm looking forward to it, and I think we're ready to move forward.
I agree that I think any opportunity to activate that street should be encouraged. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, good track record in the community, with MASH too, as Commissioner Wagner noted, they have other locations, so we can see their websites and the success stories in other communities there. I like that the focus is not on college grads, or not on college students, but college grads and up. I think that's a good positive for the community. It's filling a vacant space, and as the vice chair said, it's going to activate the public space there with the Albert Al Fresco. So I'm in favor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I think we'll take the vote then. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, that brings us to item number 8, new business. There is none. So item number 9, commissioner concerns. Are there any commissioner concerns? I think one of the things I wanted to mention is I know we had discussed at the end of last meeting potentially starting at 7:30 going forward. I guess I was curious what the mechanism would be for doing that. I know Commissioner Lapine in the past would arrive a little later. I don't think that's going to happen
Should be
now.
resolved now.
Commissioner Hendricks has a existing commitment that he gets out of and can be here around 7:30. So I'm open to discussing moving it to 7:30 if that's the direction everybody wants to go. I'm in favor of it.
Do we need a motion?
I don't know how, that's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
so-
What's the next step for
Yeah,
that?
so the planning commission typically, by motion, sets your meeting schedule for the year at the end of the prior year. So we would recommend that you identify the new start time by motion, as well as the dates by which you want to do that too. So if you sort of know where this would potentially end and revert back to 7, that's helpful. Or I don't know if you're thinking through the rest of the year. That's something to be considered as well.
Could we add it as an agenda item for the next meeting? Would that be a good way to go about it? I don't have all the dates. in front of me.
We could certainly, if you want to
Yeah,
not
just
act this evening, we could put it on.
To make it more, I mean, if
as a
that's the
new,
direction.
we could put it on as a new business item.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that's,
If you
Would you
put-
like-
is-
I'm certainly willing to move it to 7:30 if that's the wish of the group. And I do note that Commissioner Hendricks is usually here well before 7:30. My only concern is that it makes for an extra long day for the staff.
Oh, that's true,
And
yeah.
especially given staffing considerations right now, I am reluctant to add another burden to their day. But
True.
But I think it's worthy of discussion.
let's potentially see it at a later meeting.
Okay, yeah.
You know.
And staff does appreciate the recognition of that. So we are appreciative of that consideration as well.
That's
So,
it. That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Any other concerns? All right, seeing none, I believe a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
All right, moved by Vice Chair Bolden,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Hendricks. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:12.